Okay, a quick introduction about me. My name is Sapna Dandona. Pe- uh, I head B2B services for Payoneer India. This is the first year that we're participating in IGDC, and I frankly have no idea why, because we've met a lot of you in the past 24 hours, and while we've seen Indian gaming go global, we've also seen a lot of people extremely exasperated, right, at the state of banking and the state of payments in India. What we've been told by a lot of gaming publishers is that getting money in and out of India is a real pain, right? It does not matter whether you're a real money gaming company, whether you're a publisher, or you're a developer who's working for, let's say, a slightly bigger studio outside of India. Remittances and international payments is something that everybody struggles with, and we've seen different kinds of people have different kinds of experiences with bank, and everybody having a unique payment journey. Today, we will be covering what cross-border payments are. The term, again, sounds slightly complicated. What are the popular methods of payments which are preferred in major countries? So what are the challenges that people have? And what are the challenges, more importantly, that an average developer or a small studio which is starting out faces, and how Payoneer can help solve those problems? So what are cross-border payments? If anybody has any idea, we'd love to hear from you. Sorry? Paying somebody in Pakistan, I would not start with that. But yeah, you're right. Cross-border payments, simply put, is payments in and out of the border, or let's say the domestic border of a particular company. So let's say it simply means international payments, right? Or the movement of money across various currencies. So let's say you're a developer in Hyderabad who's working for a gaming studio in the US or UK, right? So in this case, the payments are going to move from a USD or a GBP into INR. Simply put, it is the collection and payout of money with the added complexity of foreign exchange. Now, what are the challenges that typically plague Indian companies, specifically developers, mobile developers or app developers, right? The first problem that we've seen people struggle with is they just don't know how to accept payments if they're sitting in India, right? So intuitively, as a small business owner, what would you do? You would go to a bank, you would go to a popular bank, ask them to open a current account for you, and ask them to issue you a SWIFT code. And that is typically the bank account and the SWIFT code that you would be sharing with customers outside of India, and ask them to make a wire transfer to you, right? So intuitively, this is something that you are going to start with. Unfortunately, this is where the nightmare starts. Now, of course, don't get me wrong. Indian banks are great with UPI, NPCI, etc. We have one of the best banking infrastructures in the world. But it's just that the problem is that when it comes to foreign exchange transactions, it's just simply extremely complicated because you're not dealing with just one bank. You're dealing with multiple banks, multiple intermediaries, and multiple regulations globally. Unfortunately, when it comes to FX transactions, the level of service that you get, even from the best banks in the country, are a factor of how small or how big you are, right? So let's say that you're a gamician or you're somebody very big who has a huge float with a particular bank. The bank is going to give you great service, your commercials probably are not going to be very bad, and you will have a relationship manager at your beck and call, right? But the moment you're starting out and you're slightly small, banking becomes a nightmare. Let me give you a few examples. We have a developer. He's a 15-member company in Mumbai. The payments that they receive from outside of India are payments, and they work on small projects, right? So these are payments of, let's say, $1,000, $1,500, and they receive multiple payments like these in a month. Now, for their customer who's sitting in the US, every wire transfer costs $30, which is why their customers say that, hey, instead of making you 5 payments in a month of, let's say, $500 or $1,000, we are going to make you one consolidated payment of, let's say, $5,000 because I don't want to incur this $30 fee again and again. Now, you can imagine the state of working capital for this particular developer, right? He's constantly hand to mouth simply because all of his payments are tied because the effects of transferring money into India is just so high. Another example, we have a customer in Bangalore who has figured out an international payment provider, and he typically sends a link to his customer, and his customers prefer to pay him using a credit card. Now, this person, again, is plagued because this international payment provider, they charge them a bomb. They charge them as high as 7 to 8%. And the rationale that comes from some of these companies are that, hey, you're a services company, you can afford it, right? You have margins, and everybody knows the kind of margins that we have in gaming. Another example, a customer in Delhi extremely frustrated with banks because banks ask all kinds of questions about the nature and about the source of payment the moment you're a gaming company. And we all know how gaming companies get treated by the regulator and by banks in India, right? So the moment you are a combination of somebody receiving a remittance from around the world and a gaming company, your life again becomes extremely complicated. Banks are going to ask you all kinds of questions. Your payments are sporadically put on hold. And again, it just becomes very, very difficult for you to do business. Another example of a developer in Chennai who has to visit the branch. He is dependent on his branch for every small transaction. He has to go for his branch. There is extremely complicated amount of paperwork involved. And there is something called a FIRC, if any of you is aware of. It's called a Foreign Inward Remittance Certificate. Right? So the moment you receive a FX transaction, for you to be compliant, it's a document that a bank has to issue to you, which kind of legitimizes the reason you're getting foreign exchange from outside of India. For this document, you have to constantly keep chasing your branch. There is documentation involved. You have to physically go sign certain documents, and that's when you close the loop on these foreign transactions. Until that happens, your CA is going to hound you. You are not going to be compliant, and you will not be able to file your taxes, right? Let me not even get into the horrors of having your transaction stuck. So imagine a case where somebody in the US has made a payment to you, and they typically share a transaction receipt saying that, hey, I have made a payment to you. It should typically hit your bank account in, let's say, 24 hours. You wait for a day, you wait for 2 days, you wait for 3 days, the payment never comes, right? So again, as a layman, as a customer, what would you do? You would speak to your customer and you would say that, hey, I never got your payment. The customer will say that, look, from my side, it's processed, the amount has been deducted from my end. Why don't you check with your local bank and see where the payment is, right? You contact your branch, the branch says, sorry, it's a foreign transaction. The moment it hits our account, we'll be able to help you. But right now, we don't have a clue. We've again seen cases where it's been a delay of more than 10 days between a customer in the US making a wire transfer and a person in India receiving that particular transfer. And the most unfortunate thing is that there is nobody who's proactively working for you. Because in a bank, for that bank, maybe that $500 is inconsequential, right? But when you're a small developer, that is something that you need to pay your next freelancer, right? So this timeliness and how critical every payment is, this is something which unfortunately banks fail to appreciate, specifically for the smaller businesses. Now a little bit about what are the popular methods which are internationally, right? So India, we all understand there's UPI, there's IMPS, there's NEFT, there's RTGS. Again, like I said, that the payments that we have in India are extremely ahead of the rest of the world, right? Our tax are next to negligible. You can transfer money to people round the clock. And again, you have fintechs in the domestic space, like Razorpay, Cashfreeze, etc. of the world who are doing a fantastic job, right? But when you are dealing with a global customer, right, you're dealing with somebody in the US, somebody in the UK, their countries have a very different way of making and receiving payments. And again, the comfort of people in terms of making these payments are very, very difficult, right? So let's talk about US. What are the popular methods of payment in the US? There is something called ACH. Which is equivalent of you sending a standing instruction to somebody, right? So you might put a standing instruction on my account saying that on X day, I want to auto-deduct X amount of money from your bank account, right? So this is called the ACH debit or credit. Again, if you're working with a bank in India, you will not really have access to this particular functionality, right? Wire transfer is something that all of us understand. There is a SWIFT code, there is a bank account, and somebody wire pays this particular fees to you. While wire payments are generally the most acceptable way of transferring money in and out of India, the problem again remains that it is extremely expensive for both parties involved. So we already spoke about how your customer in the US will have to incur a wire fee of $30 to make a single payment to you, because for them, it is going to be an international transaction. On the other side, when this payment, let's say, hits your HDFC bank account in India, HDFC is going to charge you a conversion charge, plus a foreign exchange charge, which will be on a FX markup for that particular day, right? So your client is losing money, you are somewhere losing money, and at the end of the day, it is eating into your margins, right? So those are typically the problems with wire transfers, but broadly an acceptable way of moving money in and out of the US. And of course, credit cards. USA is a credit card first economy. Credit cards are widely preferred not only for retail payments but also for business payments. So unlike India, their credit cards have extremely high what do you say, daily limits. And even for business transactions, so we've seen payments up to 15K, $15,000 come in a single credit card transaction. So that's typically how a US operates. Now, this was the US, and similarly, you have something called SEPA in Europe. You have something called BACS in the UK. In Canada, you have EFT, and again, in Australia as well, you have EFT, right? So again, different countries, different customers, different preferences, different tax, different regulations, and different ways of receiving and sending money. Now, what are the problems with the wire transfer, right? So we spoke about how expensive they are. We spoke about the fact that sometimes that your payments can get lost and banks are not in an urgency to kind of resolve these particular issues. There are also instances where somebody in risk or compliance is going to hold that payment and kind of start asking you various questions, right? So what we've typically seen is that it is very difficult for banks to understand business models. So imagine somebody in your nearest branch trying to figure out what you do, what happens in gaming, why is Google making a payment to you, who is this customer, can you give me the KYC of this customer? This is typically where these transactions become kind of frustrating. There is a particular document that you need, which is called a FIRC, right? So again, we spoke about a customer who is receiving wire payments, but at the same time, they're struggling because their bank does not provide them a FIRC. So what is the ideal solution, you ask? Ideal solution should be that the moment you receive a wire transfer, the moment you receive, let's say, $100 into your account, within 24 hours, ideally, your bank should be sending you a digital receipt, which says that, hey, this is your amount, this is your source of payments, this is the amount that you received, right? So typically, AD1 banks are supposed to be doing this for you, but unfortunately, they don't. And like I said, depending on how small or big you are, the levels of service that you get from your banks are going to be extremely, extremely different. Now, here's where we come in, right? I don't know how many of you have heard about Payoneer. We started business around 16 years ago. We're a company based out of Israel. We got listed on NASDAQ in 2017. We had our IPO. And currently, we are present across 20 countries. We have about 2,000 employees across the globe. Our core is cross-border payments. We deal with the complexity of cross-border payments. That is what our expertise and that is what the core of our business is. We have more than 4 million customers worldwide. We support 2,000 marketplaces, and we would love to show you who we work with. So anybody, and we're talking about gaming, right? So we work with Google, we work with Amazon, we work Amazon Publishing, we work with Upworks, we work with Fiverr. So let's say if you're a small developer, or if there's somebody who's a freelancer who plans to either enlist their business or start working with overseas clients, you would have probably heard of us. We spoke about all the problems that you have when you do a cross-border transaction. Now let's talk about an ideal solution, and let's talk about an ideal solution provider who can help you, right? So ideally, when you're dealing with foreign payments, and eventually you plan to expand your business, right? Not just in India, but expand your business, let's say, in 2 or 3 different countries, right? So tomorrow you might say that, hey, now it makes sense for me to set up an entity outside of India. Wouldn't it be great for me to have banking infrastructure outside of India? Which is typically what a lot of developers do. They start small in India, but after a point, it just makes more sense to have an entity in the US. It legitimizes your business because people in US kind of prefer doing with entities who also have some kind of presence outside of India. And second, with respect to taxation, with respect to the amount of dollars saved, it just kind of makes more sense to eventually expand and take those tax benefits, right? So the bank or the partner or the fintech that you work with should be able to help you not only do transactions seamlessly, but help you really grow business globally. Now, how does Payoneer support you? There can only be 2 business use cases. One could be collections and the other one could be payout, right? We help you collect money by issuing you virtual accounts in 10 plus currencies. Imagine a business sitting out of Hyderabad without having an entity in 10 different, countries, having a local bank account in 10 different currencies. We also help you collect payments from your customers through credit cards. We have a payment gateway offering, which is specifically meant for those businesses who have a lot of international transactions, or let's say customers outside of India who are making a lot of transactions on their website. On the payout side, we help you do mass payouts in more than 150 currencies. So we've got use cases like you mentioned, right? Hey, how do I pay somebody in Pakistan? That's something that you can do. Of course, we have to be regulated and we have to be compliant. There is something called OFAC. So for example, you today can't make any kind of payment in Russia. You cannot make any of the sanctioned lists. Syria, for example, you cannot make a payment. But outside of this list, if you want to make payments in the Middle East or if you want to make payments in Dubai, Payoneer, again, can help you support more than 150 currencies. We have completely solved the FIRC problem. We give you a digital FIRC. And in case you set up an entity outside of India, we also help you hold on to your dollars indefinitely. People who have a EFC account in India, the maximum time that you can hold on to your dollars is 1 month. That is the amount which is stipulated by RBI. But in case you have a Payoneer account and you have an entity outside of India, you can hold on to your dollars for an indefinite period of time. Regulation, again, like we said, that the regulation in different countries is different, and you need a partner who is regulated. We are present today across 50 countries. We have offices in around 20 countries, and we are regulated. We abide by various regulations depending on the law of the land. In India, we are regulated by RBI, and we work under the OPGSP license. Like I said, that we love to talk about the brands who we work with. This is our coaster of brands. In gaming, we work with Kinguin, we work with Gamevo, all the Airbnb transactions that happen in India. So let's say you're a host and you go and register on Airbnb, the payments happen to you via Payoneer. You need to compulsorily set up a Payoneer account before you can enlist yourself as a host in Airbnb. Similarly, if you are a seller who wants to sell on Walmart, you have to compulsorily create a Payoneer account. I think Upwork and Fiverr is something that will be super relevant to the developers that we have here. Again, if you have a Payoneer account, working with any of these marketplaces becomes super easy. This is one of a customer that we would love to spotlight, Rendered Ideas. They are again a game publisher. They have their app, which has about 200 million downloads. They are listed on the Amazon App Store. They use Facebook Ad Network. They're also on Apple, and they also use Google AdMobs to monetize their app. How we kind of support them and what they were struggling with. They've been with us for about 4 years now. What they were typically struggling with was the high FX that banks were charging them, and there was no digital FIRC. We've kind of solved this problem for them. What they've done is at the moment they set up a developer account on Apple Store. As their settlement account, they have inputted their Payoneer virtual account, through which we help them receive those payments and settle those payments seamlessly into their HDFC bank account in India. This entire process is way cheaper. It's extremely compliant in terms of FIRCs. We've given them an extremely easy to use dashboard, and yeah, that's what we do for them. Again, like, don't take our word for it, right? So here's a small video of a customer testimonial. We thought you'd love to hear from our customers. I'm not sure if the audio is working.
I'm Shivanath Devinarayan, founder and CEO of Daysworks. We are a platinum seal. I'm Shivanath Devinarayanan, founder and CEO of Daysworks. We are a Platinum Salesforce partner headquartered in Kochi. Daysworks was born out of a vision of transforming businesses. When we started out, there was no set template of success that we could follow. Our mantras for success and happy customers is having the right people for every job. Our journey started with a small team of 2 members in a co-working space in Kochi, and currently we are spread across 4 continents with multiple offices. In our successful journey, there are many partners who have played a significant role. These are silent performers who help spin our wheels of success. Payoneer has been one such partner for us who's been delivering seamless and worry-free cross-border commerce solutions to us. Payoneer's global payment solution has helped us deliver much better customer experience to our clients worldwide. Today, when we give them local receiving accounts across US, UK, Australia, Canada, it makes international transactions very simple and convenient by enabling them to pay locally. I remember a recent incident that happened where we had to change our local receiving bank, and we were able to do this with a simple click of a button, which was a hassle-free experience for both us and our customers. The support of the FIC documentation for firms like us who do business across borders, now they've made it automated and easily downloadable. Their personalized account manager helps us proactively to make sure that we are successful and guides us with their expertise on international payments, which makes our life much easier. I recommend all IT consultants who want to make a name for themselves to forge a strong relationship with Payoneer like we have.
That's it. We're in stall number 9. Any questions? Anybody has any questions? Any feedback? We'd be happy to hear from you. Please, sir. Yes.
So can I know who's your main competitor are? Who are your main competitor who provide this similar kind of service?
So, see, with wire transfers, we're practically competing with any and every bank in India, right? So, any international bank, somebody like a Citibank, Standard Chartered, etc., because we are in a way an alternate to wire transfers, right? So, all leading international banks in India. In terms of fintechs, we would be similar to, let's say, a PayPal, a Stripe, because there's just not one solution that we provide, right? So, we have expertise in multiple solutions. So, for example, for certain payments, we compete with PayPal. For our payment gateway solution, we might compete with Stripe. You've got certain local pairs in India who are now coming up. You've got somebody called NewM. There is somebody called Pay Global, who's come up in international payments. But globally, Payoneer is a brand in itself.
So like you have a strong market hold, no competition whatsoever.
See, there's no. There would be folks who compete with us in certain products that we have in our suite. But is there anybody who's solving all of these problems? No.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hi.
I'm an IP lawyer and I consult video games. I am interested to understand if you would also enable something for crypto, because Web3 games, they have an in-game economy where they might not be dealing in the currencies, but they might want to transact using crypto. So will that also be available?
So that's a great question. That's in fact a lot of queries that we got back at our stall. Unfortunately, and it's not that we don't want to do crypto, or we don't want to participate in Web3 or NFTs. The problem is that any fintech today, right, relies on banks. So, for example, in India, our partners are Citibanks, Deutsche Banks, etc. of the world, right? RBI has been extremely grey when it comes to their stand on crypto, right? So while we know that last year there was a overturn, right, which is when a lot of crypto companies kind of started again. So while we know it's not illegal, but it's also not a clear yes. And banks in India so far have been extremely conservative, and they do not support crypto as a line of business. So that's again one handicap that we have, why we are not able to participate in this particular line of business. Having said that, if there is a developer in India, right, so we just spoke to somebody who is not really trading in NFTs or cryptocurrency, but they are developers who are developing the blockchain technology or NFTs for slightly bigger companies outside of India, right? So we support them because then for us it's a business to business transaction. There's a developer in India who's doing some crypto specific work for another company which is outside of India, which may or may not be a crypto exchange, right? So we're facilitating those B2B transactions, but do we support crypto exchanges or any kind of customer transactions involving crypto? No. Not at this point.
So you have no plans to go there?
Unless the regulation changes and unless it's more black and white, for now, no.
I have another question. So I want to understand if your services are more apt for publishers or developers.
That's also a great question. So I would want to segregate it into two parts, right? So one part would be, let's say, a developer. He could be a freelancer, he could be SMB, he could be, let's say, a 15 people organization who is developing games for the purpose of selling them to a larger studio, right? So typically what do you say, outsourced units, right, in India who are developing games for a global customer. So that is one part where we come in, where we can help facilitating payments between that bigger studio, let's say in the US, and the company based out of Hyderabad. So that's one example. The second example would be when you spoke about publishers. Now, how do we work with publishers, right? So we've worked with publishers in the capacity of 2 or 3 products. One of the examples that we took, let me just move on to that slide quickly. So if you look at Rendered Ideas, right? So Rendered Ideas is a publisher. You've heard of Gamission, you've heard of maybe Moonfrog, you would have heard of Gamesberry. Similarly, Rendered Ideas. They have their app, and again, it's a casual gaming app, which is listed on Amazon Publishing. It is listed on Apple, right? And they also monetize using Unity and Google AdMobs. Now, how we come in this particular case, a publisher is monetizing in 2 ways. One is in-app purchases. Apple, after deducting its 30% commission, eventually makes a wire transfer. So now imagine Apple deducting their 30% on every in-app purchase, plus additional 2 or 3 to 5% of banks eating into that margin, because Apple makes payments as wire payments. So these are USD payments which get converted into your account. So that is where we are coming in for Rendered Ideas. We are the account in which they are collecting those Apple payments, and then Payoneer settles that money to them into their Indian bank account. We are saving them foreign exchange.
I have a follow-up question.
Yes.
Payment collections is something which publishers help with. So if Payoneer wants to help developers with that, then if developers want to go with publishers also,
Yes.
then developers might not be able to segregate the payment collections from publishers' obligations. If Payoneer is able to crack that, probably the role for a publisher might lessen, and it could be beneficial for developers also.
Yeah.
Because when collection and transfer is with publisher, a lot of leverage is also with them then.
Yes, that's true.
So that is why I wanted to understand in what way your services are more apt for developers, and whether you are connected to those other platforms like Steam and places where games are sold.
Yeah.
If you are helping only with remittances, or connecting to these platforms to directly collect and transfer to developers, something which publishers help with.
Correct, absolutely. So if there are any marketplaces where games are being, where games are in a way getting aggregated, right, and then being picked up by publishers, that is something where we are definitely present. But at the same time, like I said, that for now, we come in whenever there's a foreign transaction involved, right, whenever there is a FX involved. So that is the capacity in which we are supporting publishers today. But yeah, I mean, that's a great feedback, that if we are able to, regulate the entire value chain, it would actually be a great product which could add value to publishers as well as individual developers. So currently, we don't have a escrow kind of model where we collect payments and then kind of also make those payouts on behalf of the publisher to, let's say, an individual developer. But we have seen cases and we have customers who globally collect payments, and we also have a mass payout product that I spoke of, right? So imagine one publisher who's collecting a bulk of payments from these monetization platforms and then using our payout product to disburse to, let's say, 100 developers who've listed their games for that particular publisher. Those are also transactions that we support.
So I understand that then the publisher's role as a collection agent will not diminish with you because publisher will just use Payoneer to remit that amount.
Correct. Yes.
Understood. Thank
Yeah.
you.
So typically these things get captured in the agreement that they would have with the developer, where they come in the capacity of a collection agent as well as a publishing entity. Hi.
Hello. Yeah, my question is, so we get payments from around the globe for the prototypes that we make.
Awesome.
But yeah, so how is Payoneer any better than Wise? And if I want to recommend it to publisher that we work with, why should I do it?
That's again a great question. Wise as a platform is meant for P2P transfers, right? So any kind of international transaction can be broken down into two, just the way domestically, right? We can break a transaction into two parts. One is a transaction that is happening between two businesses, right? So the transaction that happens between a developer and a publisher, for example, today, right? The other one is, let's say, me sending money to my mother, right? Or you sending money to a friend. So Western Union, Wise, these are P2P transactions. They are not regulated. I'm assuming you use Wise right now, but you've not faced a problem till now. Wise also does not give you a FIRC. So this is something that your CA will have a problem with when you're filing your foreign exchange income, because when you file in your taxes, there is something called a AOC report where you're supposed to explicitly call out how much income you received in foreign exchange. So to close that loop of transactions, your bank, which is kind of converting this remittance into INR, typically should be issuing you a FIRC. So Wise does not give you a FIRC. When developers start out slightly small, they go for options like PayPal. And PayPal, by the way, I don't have to tell you how expensive PayPal is.
Totally.
Right? So people typically, because PayPal is a slightly more recallable name, people either go with wire transfers or they start with PayPal, then they realize, oh my God, PayPal is crazy expensive. And if you're using Wise, then at some point when you grow to a particular point, your CA is going to come and tell you that, hey, you don't have FIRCs.
He didn't
So
tell us
that's
yet.
when typically you would want to use to somebody who is compliant and somebody who is cost effective. Let me put it like that.
Okay, I also want to ask you, so I came a little late, so I do not know this. Like, what is the commission percentage of Pioneer if we compare
So
it with PayPal?
It depends. So if you go to our website today and just get onboarded as a DIY customer, we charge a 2% flat, what do you say, exchange commission. That's it. And we don't have any hidden charges. So typically the heads under which banks charge you, one is going to be a conversion fee. It's going to be a flat 1,000 rupee amount. Then is going to be a service fee. Then they're going to say that, oh, dollar today is 75 rupees, right? So that's a markup. The actual rate that day could be 81 or 82, but they're going to give you, or they're going to convert your dollars at 75. So that's again a margin that you're losing out, which is the conversion markup. So you're paying for FX, you're paying for a service fee, plus you're paying a GST on top of it, right? So cumulatively, on any $100 that you're getting, banks can rip you off. They can end up charging anywhere between 3 to 5% when you put all of these charges together. Payoneer charges you 2%, that's it. We don't have any hidden charges. We also don't charge you a GST because we are not based in India.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everybody, for your time.